So we want to talk about some of these points and issues around what's happening in light of what Allah Ta'ala He mentioned in His noble book, when تَنَعْزَعْتُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ إِن كُنتُمْ تُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ ذَلِكَ خَيْرًا وَأَحْسَنُ تَأْوِيلًا. If you believe, Allah has set standards for you. If you are Muslim, Allah has set a criterion for you when you differ in anything. And Allah said, وَمَا اخْتَلَفْتُمْ مِنْ شَيْءٍ حُكْمُ إِلَى اللَّهِ. Because any time you differ, and there will be differences, we will not see eye to eye on everything. People will have debates, and things will arise. But Allah has set the standard. When that happens, فَرُدُّوهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ. You take it back to the book of Allah. You take it back to the to make this issue of Afghanistan is the issue of bad aqidah. I believe that it's foreign from the book of Allah and the sunnah of His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And that is those people that associate with non-Muslims, i.e. Jew and Christian, automatically they are kuffar. They are automatically kuffar with regards to the deen, the creed, the belief of the likes of the Taliban. And you also have to aid in this affair to Afghanistan. It is known documentation that the CIA of the United States and other wealthy countries funneled monies, weapons to help not only Osama bin Laden, who later on from that issue became what we know as Al-Qaeda, as they say in English, Al-Qaeda. But it was also to help those same Taliban push out and to flush out and to exterminate the Soviet Union from Afghanistan. Of course, those buildings fell was something strategic that had to do with explosives inside of the building, not instruments such as airplanes or jets knocking those buildings down. Then you fast forward back to the war on terrorism, so we go back to Afghanistan again, and we're into Afghanistan for 20 years. When you look at this hypocrisy, you'll find that Allah Ta'ala has mentioned clearly some cases of the Quran and on the tongue of our Messenger Sallallahu that these issues are political. These issues are for hayat dunya, that which is temporary, that which will not last, as Allah Ta'ala He mentioned, وَالْآخِرَةُ خَيْرٌ وَأَبْقَى. But the hereafter is everlasting. This dunya is going to vanish. كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ. Everything is going to perish. وَيَبْقَى وَجْهُ رَبِّكَ ذُو الْجَلَالِ وَالْإِكْرَامِ. But Allah, He will remain in His noble face, بِمَا يُلِيقُ لِجَلَالِتِهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى, without changing the meaning of face. As Allah said He has a face, and we leave it as Allah as we just said He has a face. Why am I mentioning this? Because as we talk about those issues connected to politics, it's also again an issue connected to bad aqidah, and aqidah al-fasida, because many Muslims get caught up in this. And when you see the fitna, common folk should be quiet. The everyday person shouldn't narrate. The everyday lay person shouldn't assume or make statements about what they think or what's going to happen. No, you leave that for Ahl al-Ilm. Because in the beginning, when fitna happens, no one will see the truth except Ahl al-Ilm by the permission of Allah. Because it takes basira, it takes deep insight, it takes knowing the book of Allah, and it takes knowing history as history repeats itself. Allah Ta'ala, during the time when the Prophet was in Mecca, as it relates to dealing with the non-Muslims, when it comes to safety and security, the first migration of the Sahaba was not to Medina, rather it was to Africa, which we know to be Ethiopia, the land of black people, African people, Habashia. And they were sent to this term, Najashi. People normally think that's his name. But Najashi is like the term Fir'aun, like the term Wali al-Amr, like the term Malik. It means leader. So Najashi, this was his title, the king, the leader of Ethiopia. And And we know that the Sahaba, Allah blessed them to be with a man who was trustworthy, although he was a non-Muslim. And when Allah Ta'ala blessed the Prophet to make it to Medina, as he had to leave Mecca, then they joined the Prophet in Medina. So this is just one example that working with non-Muslims in the right perspective to help the Muslim is okay, because we see it in the seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Also, Allah Ta'ala, he aided the Prophet and the believers in Mecca until the death of Abi Talib. And there was nobody who helped the Muslims. لا كان في تاريخ رجل ينصر مسلمين وهو ليس منهم مثل أبي طالب. بما أعلم. No one aided and assisted the Muslims as a non-Muslim in the history like Abi Talib. So much so, when he died, it was known, it's an Huzn, the great year of severe sadness, because the Prophet not only lost his beloved wife Khadija, radiyallahu ta'ala anha, but he also lost in that same year Abi Talib. And the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he mentioned, he said, Inna Allah sayu'ayyidu deenahu birajulin fajr, or kama qala. So Allah would aid his deen. Allah would assist his religion. Allah would help the believers by rajulin fajr. Fajr here means the person who's a non-Muslim. When the Prophet ﷺ was in Medina, the Ahzab, the groups from the Quraysh and the many others were seeking to kill the Prophet. It wasn't enough that he left Mecca and went to Medina. Imagine you in Mecca. It's your hometown. Imagine you in wherever you live. You in Gambia here. Imagine you in a place like America and the people tell you how to leave and we're going to kill you. You leave your family, you leave your wealth, you leave your home, you leave your food, you leave your drink, you leave everything behind. Forward in hawlay dhalimeen, flee from those oppressors. This was the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and ashabi, his companions. And so they found themselves in Medina, and the Prophet said, Man yansur, man yansurni fi da'wa ila Allah. من قال من يمنعني في الدعوة إلى الله من يمنعني في الدعوة إلى الله كما قال. And sometimes in Arabic, words take the opposite meanings. Like in this case, منع means to prevent. But here it meant who will prevent, who will help me in the call to Allah. And one of the people was from one of the greatest tribes during that time named Mukhtar. He stood up and he said, I will, O Messenger of Allah. But he was a non-Muslim. He was a non-Muslim. So when you look at the issue of working with Muslims and non-Muslims with regards to amin, that which is security and welfare and well-being in the islands through the glasses of the Kitab and the Sunnah, you find this does not make you a kafir. No one can say you're a disbeliever because you work in a halal fashion to bring about goodness for the Muslims, because you work with a Muslim or a non-Muslim or some people who are Jew or Christian. But this is the aqeedah of the Taliban. And those people all they know is to make a Muslim, not a non-Muslim, but to make a Muslim a kafir by some flimsy excuse. Something that's not supported by the Book of Allah, neither the Sunnah of the Prophet, so they can steal the blood. You find the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as well in a famous story about the Sulha, Hudaybiyah, when they wanted to make Umrah and they were prevented by the Quraysh. And so a pact was made that will allow them not to fight for 10 years. Freely, the Quraysh and those with them can travel and do trade, and the Muslims would not fight them and cut them off in the path. And the Muslims can do trade and do da'wah. And the Quraysh and those with them could not cut the Muslims off and take them and kill them or ransom them in the path. So the Prophet ﷺ found himself in a good situation with the treaties of Hudaybiyah. So you had two tribes in Mecca, one of them Bani Bakr. And the other tribe, they were more stronger, they had more people, but they had some that were Muslim and some that were not Muslim. So a conversation broke out as to who's So Bani Bakr, they said, we with the Quraysh. The other tribe said, well, we with the Prophet ﷺ. And again, some were Muslim and non-Muslim. And so Bani Bakr, the smaller of the tribe, they wanted to rekindle fitna between them and that other tribe. So they went to the Quraysh and they said, listen, let us have some men to come with us and some weapons because we're going to go and we're going to sneak attack this other tribe. So the Quraysh, they said, no. We made a pact with a man, meaning the Prophet ﷺ, who would not fight for 10 years. He kept putting pressure, kept putting pressure. So eventually the Quraysh said, okay. They gave them weapons, they gave them some of their men, and they went. The other tribe, they had no idea this was going to take place. And that night, they killed many people. From amongst some of the people they killed was some Quraysh people with that other tribe, cooling out, being with them, fraternizing, as we say. When that happened, one of the persons became very afraid. And he got on his camel and he rode a day and a night, 2 days, some say, to Al-Madinah. And he told the Prophet ﷺ in a very poetic way that this took place. So of course, the Prophet, his intention was to go to Mecca to make it open for the Muslims to worship. That was his main objective. He didn't want to take wound, he didn't want to shed blood, but when he heard that people got killed unjustly, including the Muslims, the Prophet got himself ready to go to Mecca and to fight with those people. Then there was a man amongst the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. His name was, if I'm not mistaken, Hatib ibn Abi Baradata. And this person, he had people in Mecca, but imagine, you grew up in a place, but you're not really from there. So you have family, but you really don't have family there, like the indigenous people. So he wrote a letter, sending to the Quraysh, saying that the Prophet Muhammad is getting ready to come to wage war. I don't know who he's going to wage war on and why, but he's coming to Mecca to wage war. He hired a lady to take this letter to the Quraysh. Allah sent wahi to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, revelation that this took place. So the Prophet sent Ali ibn Abi Talib, and if I'm not mistaken, Zubair ibn Awam, to go get that letter from the lady. So the Prophet told them exactly where the lady was. They went to the lady and they said, give us the letter. The lady said, Wallahi ma indi Shaikh, ma indi kitab wala Shaikh. She said, I swear I'm not any writing. I don't know what you're talking about. They said, Wallahi, give us the letter. So they checked her camel, they checked all her belongings, they didn't find any letter. They said, Wallahi, the Prophet didn't lie to us, and we're not lying to you. You have a letter. If you don't give us the letter, we're going to strip you naked until we find the letter. Reaching under her kimar, Wallah musta'an, even had they taken her kimar, they would not have found the letter because she had the letter tucked underneath her hair where you couldn't even see it, subhanAllah. They got the letter, took it back to the Prophet, and of course you had Sahaba that could read and write, and they read the letter right there in front of the one who wrote the letter, and the Prophet asked them, Malaka, what's this? How could you write a letter to these people, informing them? And this is considered treason. This is considered, death. But the Prophet understood there are circumstances sometimes with a person. So he asked them what's going on. Why would you do that, Hakim? And they explained, Wallahi ya Rasulullah, he said, people have family there, they have tribes, but I was someone who lived there, but I'm not really from Mecca. And I was afraid if I didn't do something, when the thing goes down, they're going to kill me, and my little family there. Of course, Umar ibn Khattab and them, they wanted to take his head off, but the Prophet left. So what's the point? Did this make the blood of that person who was a Sahaba a kafir because of what he did? Although, really in reality, he could have been killed. So there are circumstances in Islam that prevent people from going beyond the border of that which Allah and His Messenger set. And when a person has the right aqidah, when a person is grounded, him and his people, and that which Allah and His Messenger is intended, then you won't find the likes of this fitna that we have, that all of the world are bearing witness to. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you وَنَحْنُ كَذَلِكَ مِنْ كُلِّ سُوءٍ مَكْرُوهٍ. Ask Allah to free them from all of the evils and us as well. وَنَسَأَلُ اللَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى أَنْ يَنْصُرَ الْمُسْلِمِينَ فِي كُلِّ مَكَانٍ. Ask Allah to help the Muslims in every situation, in every place. وَنَسَأَلُ اللَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى أَنْ يَعْفُوَ عَنَّا وَأَنْ يُدْخِلْنَا في رحمته جل وعلا. We ask Allah to overlook and pardon us and enter us into His rahmah. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. وأفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. This is something that many times people of Sunnah, they get talked about, they get teased, they get made fun of, because we talk about the issue of Iman, the issue of Aqidah. And we know Islam also is akhlaq. As the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ يَدْخُلُونَ الْجَنَّةَ بِأَخْلَاقٍ. أخرجه Imam al-Tirmidhi وقال حديثا صحيح. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned that the most of the people in the Jannah will be there because of good character, good manners. And the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned, وَانْصُرْ أَخَاكَ ظَالِمًا أَوْ مَظْلُومًا. Help your brother whether he be oppressed or the one who's doing the wrong. They said, we understand how to help the one who's being wrong, but how do we help the wrongdoer? The Prophet said, يَمْنَعَهُ, stop him. Or if he rewrites زَجَّرَهُ, repel him, keep him back from doing the evil. The Prophet ﷺ, he also mentioned in the Sahihain, لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. None of you truly believe. And here many times people bid'ah and people of ignorance, they take the likes of this hadith and they say, well, the Prophet said, لا يؤمن. And they make this ala itlaq, that the Prophet is saying you have no iman at all. But the meaning the Prophet is saying here, that the iman needs to be tam. It's not complete. As the Tabaraka wa Ta'ala addressed the Arabs in Surah Al-Hujurat, قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا ولما يدخل الإيمان في قلوبكم. They said, we believe. We believe. It was saying with confidence and boasting. And Allah revealed, no, Prophet Muhammad, tell them they have not believed. They just only submitted. Iman has not entered their chest yet to give them the level of belief which they're claiming. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making a clear distinction in this messenger that the iman is not complete until you love for your brother what you want for yourself. And Imam Muslim, he added, Imam Mada Barakahu Fikum al-Nawawi, in his explanation, he added min al-khayrat, from the good things. Because maybe you want something bad and you want your friend to indulge in that bad. And here what's meant is the good things. So this is something that, wallahi, even common sense. How can you kill when the very code of Islam is to preserve life? The Sharia, that which many of the critics don't know what is Sharia. They think bombing and cutting off heads. Nah. Sharia means legislation, reading the Quran. Sharia means legislation, being good to the orphans. Sharia means legislation, helping the neighbor. Sharia means legislation, being kind and dutiful and subservient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Sharia means being a good husband to your wife, a good father, a good community man. Sharia means cleaning up when there's something to be cleaned up. Sharia means to feed the poor and to visit the sick. Sharia means to reflect that one day you're going to be in the grave, so you can concentrate on doing good deeds. Sharia has a broad meaning. It's not just kill and say, oh, Akbar, takbir. And so this is a reminder for us because the lack of knowledge that these groups have in the name of Islam, in the name of the Sharia, in the name of establishing a Muslim state, shows you they really don't have much knowledge because it's prohibited. And I'll give 3 examples and we close. Let's say somebody was working, again, we said, with the American government or Great Britain, and they're working against some Muslims who were raping and killing and imprisoning. Wallahi, this is a good thing. The Muslims should aid the wrongdoing Muslims should be fought against by the Muslims. As the Prophet ﷺ, he talked about the Khawarij during his time. And he told his companions, he said, you're going to live to see a people. They make more salat than you. They fast more than you. These people, يَقْرَؤُونَ الْقُرْآنَ, they are reciters of the Quran. He said, but the Quran, لَا يُجَازُ عُنُقِهِمْ, it won't go beyond their throat, meaning it won't penetrate their hearts. And he said, these people, they will make the Muslim outside of Islam quicker than the boat from the arrow. He says, so when you see the likes of these descriptions, the Prophet said, فَقَتُلُوهُمْ, kill them. But these were Muslims. Why did the Prophet say that, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if it's such a great crime to kill a Muslim? Because it is. But the only way to stop this evil, the only way to rid the people from this evil, of the likes of these people who would kill in the name of Islam, not just the non-Muslim, but the Muslim, is to exterminate them themselves. And we found the evil that they did, which is killing Uthman radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the Khawarij, while he was in his house reading the Quran, bloodied him, butchered him like you butcher a cow on Yom Udhiyah, the day of the Bihar. We found them further, Wallahu musta'an, killing Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu ta'ala anhu while he was in sujood. Can you imagine? And this is what we're seeing today. And they like to say Wahhabi, Wahhabi. This has nothing to do with Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. This goes back to the book of Allah, the sunnah of his messenger, and the issue of humanity. Even if a lady is uncovered, there's no hut in the Sharia. She should be stoned, she should be in prison, she should be whooped, she should be killed. Even with the person who leaves Islam, and I'm going to end on this note. Even the person yartat an deen, and we ask Allah to protect us from leaving our deen, because that's what fitna is designed to do, by the way. The Prophet he mentioned من بدل دينه فقتلوه in the Sahih Muslim. But there's an explanation, there's a context, there's a reason behind it. If someone leaves Islam, and many of these people being killed right now, they didn't leave Islam. But let's say they did. The Prophet's statement is not to be taken and you just kill people, because there's a thing called udhr bil-jahl, an excuse because of somebody's ignorance. Or somebody is compelled, karahatan, forced, because of circumstances. And that's why Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, when he was asked about the one who left the religion, he said, فَاسْتَتَابْ ثَلَاثَ أَيَّامٍ, give them 3 days to sit in some place confined where they can think about it, they can make tawbah before we execute them. Why? Because sometimes people are forced. Sometimes people don't know no better. Sometimes people are afraid, like those people you seen idiotically, out of some great fear we can never imagine, grabbing onto the wing of a plane only to fall to their death. SubhanAllah. So, on this day of great worship, ala yawmul mubarak, wa huwa khayr yawm tul'a ash-shams fi as-sama', as the Prophet mentioned, the greatest day that the sun risen on, which is Jumah. Let this be more than just looking at the news and saying this is horrible and how can we do this and I think this and what should happen is that. Let this be a lesson of the importance of learning the correct aqidah, the correct belief, the correct principles of the religion, sticking to the book of Allah, Kitab Allah, wa sunnati Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, ala fahm as-salaf as-salih, and the understanding of the companions, tabi'een, itba' tabi'een. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this day, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا ذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَاجْعَلْنَا مُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا اللهم أسألك الهدى والتقى والغنى والعفاف اللهم أسألك عزة الإسلام والمسلمين وعدالة الشرك والمشركين وأعداء الدين اللهم أسألك ينصرهم في كل مكان اللهم أسألك يعفو عنهم يا رب العالمين اللهم أسألك لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب وأقيم الصلاة